Welcome to Creativity Cooks. Today you are making a Blue Velvet Geode Cake. To make this recipe, you will need the following ingredients: 1¼ cups of flour, 3/4 cups of sugar, half a teaspoon of baking soda, half a teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of cocoa powder, 3/4 cups of vegetable oil, half a cup of milk, half a tablespoon of vinegar, 1 egg, 1 tablespoon of blue food coloring, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Once you have all the necessary ingredients, we can begin making your Blue Velvet Geode Cake. The first step, however, we need to preheat our ovens to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. Another prep step, we need to make some buttermilk. So in a small to medium bowl, please add half a cup of milk and half a tablespoon of vinegar and mix very well. Once you've finished mixing, we are going to set this aside for about 10 minutes. This is how we make buttermilk. In a medium bowl, we will begin to mix our dry ingredients. So we will add our 1¼ cups of flour, 3/4 cups of sugar, the half a teaspoon of baking soda, half a teaspoon of salt, and half a teaspoon of cocoa powder. If you have the Creativity Cooks meal kit, that baking soda, salt, and cocoa powder should have been mixed together in one container. Once you have all of the dry ingredients in your bowl, go ahead and use your mixing spoon and mix these dry ingredients up very well. Sometimes when we're cooking, and because the ingredients are dry, some people do not see the importance of mixing them, but it's better to mix it first prior to adding your wet ingredients. That way you can make sure that all of your dry ingredients become one harmonious dry mixture. In another bowl, we are now going to add and mix our wet ingredients. So we will begin by adding our 3/4 cups of vegetable oil. We will add 1 egg, and if it's been about 10 minutes so far, the buttermilk from step 2 should be ready, so we will now need to go ahead and add our buttermilk from step 2. Once we've added the buttermilk, we are going to continue on by adding our 1½ teaspoon of vanilla extract, followed by our 1 tablespoon of blue food coloring. Once you have all of these wet ingredients mixed together, we will need to use another mixing spoon and mix these ingredients up very, very well. Again, we want this mixture to become one harmonious wet mixture before we go ahead and fold it into the dry mixture. Also, be careful when you are mixing this mixture. You want to mix it well, but you don't want to mix it too fast because you don't want all of this food coloring to be splashing all over you, your clothes, and your countertops. Once you have finished mixing your wet ingredients, we will now fold them into our dry ingredients. To fold a mixture into another mixture simply means that we're going to add it or blend it in with another mixture. So once our blue and the blue food coloring and all the oil and buttermilk and everything is all together and you've added it to your dry ingredients, please go ahead and mix this up really, really well. The viscosity from the oil and from the egg is going to make that wet mixture a little bit thick, but we just want to take our time, be really patient with it, and we want to make sure that all of it is mixed in really well. We also want to look at the sides of our bowls. As you can see, I'm using my mixing spoon to just scrape it off as I'm going along. It's going to take you about 3 to 5 minutes to mix this entire mixture. It's not something that you want to do very fast. You just want to make sure that you do it very well. And again, as you're doing it, use that mixing spoon and scrape off any dry mixture that you might still see at the side of your bowl. And if you need to change hands and move this around a little bit, if your hands are getting too tired, you can do that. But we want to use some of our elbow muscles and our arm muscles and get in there and mix up this mixture really well. If you have an electric hand mixer, you can use that as well. I know some students don't have all the different appliances at home, so we're trying to make sure that we do this in a way that everybody can still get the job done, even if they don't have the appliances at home to do them, or that will help them do it a little bit faster. But it's no worry. I took a few minutes and I just mixed this up. My blue velvet cake should be nice and smooth at this point, and I'm going to get my pan ready for baking. So once you've decided on the pan that you're going to be using for baking, I am using basting spray to baste my pan. If you don't have basting spray, you can also put some margarine, about half a tablespoon to a tablespoon of margarine or butter into this pan. You can use a paper towel and you can just make sure that whether it's your basting spray or your butter, you get that right into the pan. You get especially the sides and especially the corners, which are areas that we tend to miss. We want to make sure that once this cake is baked, it's not going to be sticking to this pan, and you can easily remove it once you're finished with your recipe. So once your baking pan has been basted, we are now going to carefully add our blue velvet cake mix to this pan. We want to be careful. This is a little bit heavy at this point. If you need to ask for your parent or guardian to help you, please do that. But do not drop this cake mixture on the ground. It has happened before and it is not fun. So we're going to carefully add this cake mix to our baking pan, and we're going to let this sit for about 3 to 5 minutes so it can settle. You can see the ripples on top of my cake mix at this point. I don't want to put it into the oven right away because I don't want it to bake like that. I would like for this to be as smooth as possible, so I'm just going to sit and let it settle until some of these ripples are out, and then I am going to go ahead and bake this in the oven at 375 degrees Fahrenheit for about 30 to 35 minutes. While your cake is baking, this is a great chance to go ahead and make your cream cheese frosting. So to make your cream cheese frosting, you will need 4 ounces of cream cheese, 1 cup of confectioner's sugar, half a cup of butter, a quarter tablespoon of vinegar, a half a teaspoon of vanilla extract, and some of your blue rock candy from last week's meal kit. And once you have those ingredients, let's begin. We will need to start by softening your butter. To soften your butter, you can leave it at room temperature for about 2 hours, or you can also add it to the microwave for about 15 seconds to soften it. I softened mine a little bit more than I would like to because I softened it. I put it for 30 seconds and I just let it run. But 15 seconds is generally a good time to soften your butter. Once the butter is softened, we are going to add 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract to the butter, and we will use our mixing spoon and continue mixing. Once the vanilla extract has been added to the butter, we now need to add some cream cheese. Cream cheese, again, is something that you can soften up and leave it at room temperature for about an hour or 2 to soften. But I did not have enough time to do that, so I'm going to use my microwave to soften this. And to soften it in the microwave, this is not written on your recipe, but you can follow along with this. You can put it in the microwave for about 15 seconds, and that should soften it up pretty well. As you can see, this is my cream cheese before I softened it, and this is what it looks like after I've softened it. I just took this from the microwave and I'm just going to use my mixing spoon and mix it up a little bit, but you can see how much softer it is now than before I added it to the microwave. And it's really important to have this cream cheese a little bit softer when you are putting it to mix up with your butter, because we want to make this frosting as smooth as possible. And if your cream cheese is not soft, then you're going to have a really chunky frosting for your cake. So once my cream cheese has been softened, I'm going to add it to my butter mixture, and I'm going to use my mixing spoon to begin mixing it. As you can see, this is a really tricky mixture. To use your mixing spoon, you're constantly going to have to break it up. It's possible, it's absolutely doable. You want to be careful that you're not splashing this outside of your bowl, but you definitely will need to put some muscle in here to soften up this mixture and mix it together really, really well. Another option that you do have if you want to go ahead and mix this, well, first, let's add our vinegar to this mixture. We're going to add about a quarter tablespoon of vinegar to our cream cheese mixture, and we are going to add it, and we're going to keep mixing. This helps to just break it up a little bit more, but as you can see, this mixture, if you're mixing it by hand, you're going to be mixing it for a good maybe 3 to 5 minutes. The other option is if you do have an electric mixer or an electric whisk, then you can pull that out. You can ask your mom or dad or parent or guardian for help, and go ahead and use an electric mixer to mix this cream cheese and butter mixture up. An electric mixer just does it a lot faster. It makes your mix a lot more frothy, and it just makes it a little bit easier to mix it. You want to do something though that I did not do, is I was planning on mixing this entirely by hand, and my bowl, as you can see, is pretty small. So if you are not at this step yet and you're watching this recipe in retrospect, then definitely use a medium to large bowl for this mixture when or if you decide to use an electric mixer for the mixing portion of this cream cheese frosting. Once the cream cheese is nice and frothy and it's all blended up into the butter, it should look like a smooth mixture similar to this. We will now need to add our confectioner's sugar to this mixture. I've added about a cup of confectioner's sugar, and again, I'm going to use my mixing spoon and continue mixing the confectioner's sugar into this cream cheese frosting. I absolutely spoiled myself in the last step by not using my mixing spoon and using my electric mixer. So I'm going to start off by using just my mixing spoon. And what I want to do with this is I definitely want to use my spoon and scrape off some of this confectioner's sugar that is stuck onto the side of my bowl. We do not want the butter and the cream cheese to be too liquid, and the confectioner sugar really helps to break the liquid part of this recipe down. So we definitely want to scrape off as much as we can of it that might be stuck to the side of your bowl. And as you can see, my hand mixture just works perfectly fine using my hands, but I'm going to go ahead and just bring my electric whisk back in here so I can froth this up just a little bit more and make this cream cheese frosting a little bit lighter and fluffier, and that I get from using my electric mixer as opposed to just my hand mixture. And once your cake is finished, it should be finished right about this time. If you were kind of following along with this recipe, we need to go ahead and remove it from the oven. Please ask a parent or guardian for help. And remember to do a check. You can use a fork or you can use a bamboo skewer to double check that your cake has been cooked and it is indeed ready to go. And once you do remove it from the oven, we need to let it sit to cool for about 30 to 60 minutes. You don't want to add your cream cheese frosting onto this cake while the cake is still warm, because the cream cheese frosting will get really runny. If you want to do yourself a favor while the cake is cooling, you can put your cream cheese frosting into the fridge or the freezer, and it will help to harden up a little bit so you're not tempted to ice it right away when it is too warm. Once your cake has been cooled and you're ready to add your cream cheese frosting to the cake, you can use a spatula like I'm using, or if you don't have a spatula, you can use a flat butter knife. What you want to do is you want to cover the top of your cake and the sides of your cake with your cream cheese frosting. This is not going to be a frosting decorating class, so I'm not going to dive too much into what you should do to add the frosting to this cake. But what we want to do is we just want to make sure that we can cover every part of this cake with the cream cheese frosting that we do have. I am putting this on this cake, and I said not to do it when your cake is warm. But for the purpose of this video, my cake is still a little bit warm, so my frosting is not as hard or as solid as it should be onto this cake. But I just wanted to make sure I could film this in time so I could have it ready for you guys to see this tutorial. So I'm just going to though just take my time. However, even though this cake is a little bit warm, the icing itself is getting a little bit runny for it. You might not be having that problem if you had let your cake cool down and if your cream cheese frosting had had the opportunity to cool down as well. So I'm just, again, I'm using my spatula. I am covering the top of this cake and the sides of this cake with as much cream cheese frosting as possible. Once that is finished, I am going to use a spoon or an ice cream scoop, and I'm going to scoop just a small amount of my cake just out of this entire cake. I'm just going to scoop it off. If you want to eat this part right here, right now, feel free to do that. But we just need a little hole in our Blue Velvet Geode Cake so we can add our geodes to it, which is our rock candy. So some of you made this rock candy last week. If you did not make it last week, no worries. You do not have to worry about this step of it. You can just probably go back and fill that area in with some cream cheese frosting, or you can fill it with just regular granular sugar. Or you can just completely skip that step altogether. But if you do have your rock candy, we will need to separate this from the lollipop sticks that they're on. I'm using just one of the small jars that I used to make my rock candy last week, and I'm just taking as much of this rock candy off of my lollipop stick as much as possible so that I can have some small chunks of it. This rock candy, if you ever see geode candy or geode cookies or geode cupcakes, this is what we do. We basically use rock candy. You can also purchase sugar crystals at the store as well. It's a lot easier though since we had the rock candy already. But what we're going to do is we're just going to basically now make science meet art. We want to make this cake look like a geode. So we are going to fill that empty area with the rock candy that we made from Creativity Cooks Science Kits 1. You can use a spoon or a knife just to kind of even it out and blend it around in here. But this is the art of it. We want this to look like a geode rock in the middle of your cake, and the essence or the look of it is going to be made from the rock candy that you made. We also, if you don't have enough rock candy left over, or if you want to decorate around this some more, you can also just use a little bit of just regular sugar, and you can add it into the sides of it just to really kind of paint that picture to make it look like a geode rock that is just inserted itself into your delicious chocolate chocolate flavored Blue Velvet Geode Cake. You can play around with this as much as you like. I had a little bit of extra rock candy and I added a little bit to the size of my cake, but this is your Blue Velvet Geode Cake. We hope that you enjoyed this recipe. We hope that you had fun with it. Again, if you don't have your rock candy, that's perfectly fine. We hope that you still enjoy the cake. Thank you all so much for cooking with us, and we will see you guys next week.